I firstly want to welcome the bill and to say that I wish the Minister, Robert Troy, every success in his appointment. I think it's good that we have someone that understands business and the difficulty of transacting business in normal times, and that he has, with such speed, got to the point where these changes are now being introduced as part of the new COVID-19 requirements in terms of dealing with business and ensuring that legally they are able to operate in an efficient way, covering all of the aspects of the law. And it is an essential piece of legislation because it is law, and you never know when it is going to be contested one way or another, be it a board meeting or be it the paperwork and so on. So it is essential that we get it right, and that in renewing it according to the bill itself for the periods of time that it is required, that it is done so carefully and in a way that can be changed should that be necessary for the future. The provision of documents and the stamping of documents is a vital part of the transaction of business. It's a vital part of court proceedings if they should happen. So therefore, those original documents that are required must be arrived at in an appropriate way, in a legal way, and that they must be then acceptable not just to the business and the board, but also that they can be tested in the courts. And that is an essential part of any contest or any legal challenge that may be faced by any business. You mentioned in your speech, Minister, that you're responding in the context of COVID-19, but in a common sense way. And I would ask you, in the course of your work as a Minister, that you would look at that and apply the common sense that's necessary for the transaction of business in this country. And I'm sure that you will agree that there is a need for certainty in business in very uncertain times. So the proposals that you put forward, or the supports that are put in place for a business, must be secure, and they must be for the longest period of time that you can achieve in the context of dealing not just with COVID, but with the serious problem that now faces the country in terms of COVID and the Brexit negotiations. And it's quite clear from the world economy that there is a serious problem emerging in the context of how we trade and in the context of keeping the individual economies alive and well and trading during these times. There will be new challenges, but in Ireland, the basic central theme of what we need to protect is small business, is family businesses, and the insurance that those family businesses can trade well. Now, for a long number of years, we have had issues with insurance companies, we have had issues with the banks, and we have had issues with regulations generally. And I would encourage you, in the context of company law, to deal with the regulations that are weighing so heavily on businesses. The need to comply with regulation is an enormous cost to business, and it is a cost that is preventing businesses from developing in the normal way that they should. Because as you take the next step in the development of your business, you have to look over your shoulder to see what other regulations will be applied in your case and the cost of those regulations. And I can speak from the transport end of things, when my background is in the transport industry and indeed in small business. And I have to say that looking at the regulation now, in comparison to what was there, say, 10 years ago, it is substantially changed, and it is absolutely in need of reform. Absolutely in need of reform. And I would encourage you to look at that, just as much as I would encourage you to look at the insurance industry. I appreciate it's not your brief, but you will understand, as someone that has developed a keen interest, not just in the SME sector, but beyond that, that the insurance industry itself needs to be reformed. And it needs to be responsive to the needs of a modern business community that is asking for extended coverage because of litigation. So I understand that Deputy Fleming, Minister Fleming and others are now looking at this, but for 5 years on the Finance Committee and before my time on that committee, we examined every detail and every change that could be made in order to give fair play to small businesses. And they were objected to and derailed by the industry itself. So there is a need to find another way to solve the problems of insurance in this country. And if we don't do it soon, we are going to find that more and more businesses will close because it is a burden on top of everything else that they simply cannot carry and yet must carry. And I know from my own experience that family businesses at the end of a week will go home and it is the employees that will be paid in full for their work, and they deserve that. But the operator of the business often goes home with nothing or far less than the employee. That is the nature of small business. And small business throughout the country, in villages and towns, you have seen it yourself, and I've spoken about it in your own constituency, where they've closed for post offices, pubs, small grocery stores and so on. The heartbeat of a local community, all closed down, with no real opportunities for them to reopen again, no real grants available to them to adapt to what is a changing world and a changing society. But regardless of how much the world changes or how much business will change, in Ireland it is central to the rural way of life that small businesses should be kept alive. And you deal with here in your legislation the co-op society and the general regulations of those societies under the Societies Act and so on. And they need support. And the greatest example of community support through business comes in the shape of credit unions. And with their huge assets and their willingness to participate in rescuing the economy through business and through housing and so on, they have been prevented from doing it because government in the past has been extremely slow to respond to the requests from credit unions for them to get involved in providing the type of credit that's needed at that local level, where you have the local information available on the business, where a decision can be made on a really informed basis. And I would also encourage you in that regard, Minister, to look at the Credit Bureau. Why should someone that suffered during the crisis, did their best to keep their doors open, but for one reason or another missed a repayment or missed a number of repayments, and now they're on the Credit Bureau? They cannot get credit. They cannot get credit. And what we're doing is we're killing off a generation of entrepreneurs that carried this country in difficult times, but were unable to do it, not because of their inefficiencies or poor business methods, but were unable to do it because of the world crisis that was brought about. They're still just recovering from that crisis. They're still carrying personal debt. They've used up whatever savings or inheritance that they might have had. They're keeping their doors open based on pride and the desire to stay in business. But yet, we have not responded the way we should have had. We have not given them the grants that they need because they can't get credit. And the institutions set up, such as SPCI and so on, they have acted as nothing but a roadblock in providing the funding. And the banks have again not performed as they should in the interest of small business. So there's an awful lot of work to be done. And I'm not loading it all on your shoulders, but you're a minister with a vision, and you're a minister with an understanding of what needs to be done. And I would encourage you not to be afraid of tackling the big issues, because it's those big issues that will change things in a direct way for family businesses and those businesses that are caught up in the difficult problems that now exist in the world. Down to the basic need of carrying stock and not being able to sell that stock because it's now gone out of season. And these are the things that they're serious issues that need to be addressed like that. And I would ask you to take a hands-on, common-sense approach, and I know you will achieve the best for the SMEs in Ireland.